Imperio.
And Crucio.
And Avada Kedavra. Oh my.
This podcast is the property of the Half-Blood Princesses.
I'm Demi.
I'm Jess.
The story will begin in a flourish. Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 of the Half-Blood Princesses, a Harry Potter podcast. We are super excited to be here again.
Yes, we are. If you have not followed us on social, what are you doing with your lives? We have a Facebook and YouTube channel called the Half-Blood Princesses, a Harry Potter podcast, and we have Twitter and Instagram at HBPrincessesPod. You can also call us and leave us a voicemail at 412-228-5435. We'd love to hear from you, and your voicemail will be featured in a future episode. Demi, what is our topic for episode 5?
Our topic is the unforgivable curses. And we have a very special guest with us, Kayla.
I'm Kayla. I'm in Hufflepuff. I have a Larch World wand with a phoenix feather core. I am a Black Bear Patronus. My favorite book is book number 4, The Goblet of Fire. My favorite character is Dobby, and my favorite class is Charms.
Awesome. We are so excited to have you here.
I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Kayla. We will see you back here for our Tales of Magic and Mischief segment. But now, let's get into our quote. It's time for Quick Quotes Corner. Today's quote comes from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire from Chapter 14 called The Unforgivable Curses. They spent the rest of the lesson taking notes on each of the unforgivable curses. No one spoke until the bell rang, but when Moody had dismissed them and they had left the classroom, a torrent of talk burst forth. Most people were discussing the curses in awed voices. Did you see it twitch? And when he killed it just like that? They were talking about the lesson, Harry thought, as though it had been some sort of spectacular show. But he hadn't found it very entertaining.
In Moody's defense against the dark arts lesson on the unforgivable curses, he demonstrated each of the curses by using spiders. The students watched as a spider did cartwheels while under the Imperius Curse, twitched with pain while under the Cruciatus Curse, and rolled over dead from Avada Kedavra. For most of the students, this was just an interesting demonstration, something to talk excitedly about, but not for Harry. The whole point of the lesson was to show the students what they're up against, what's out there. It's easy to not take the curses seriously while watching them being put on spiders while sitting in a classroom, but Harry has first-hand experience with the unforgivable curses. He has memories of flashes of green light and his mother's screams, and knows firsthand the dangers of Avada Kedavra, even having the curse placed on him when he was only a baby and surviving it. Especially after Lord Voldemort's rebirth, things are more serious than ever, and Harry understands that it isn't a game, it's the reality of the dark arts. I think this shows a lot about human nature in general, because sometimes people don't take things seriously or truly understand the severity of things until they personally experienced it. With something as terrifying as the unforgivable curses, it's impossible to truly understand the harsh reality until one experiences it firsthand, the way Harry does.
Yeah, Demi, I completely agree with what you're saying. The only analogy I can think here is the Hunger Games, because in the Hunger Games, the people in the Capitol watch kids in the arena kill themselves, and they're like, this is so cool, it's like a wrestling match but with blood. And if you're in the arena, you're like, no, I'm fighting for my life. And this is the same situation in Harry Potter. He's like, yeah, it's cool that the spider died, but think about what it would feel like if it was your human body getting these things put on them. I mean, the Imperius Curse doesn't hurt, but the rest of them do. And I think the only other person in the class who understands the severity of the curses is Neville, because his parents were tortured with the Cruciatus Curse. So he and Harry have that maturity where they're like, yes, this might look fun now, but it's really not in real life.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that the other students get a real reality check after Voldemort comes back, because you start to see like things happening to their own parents and their families and the people they love. So going back to what I said before, like they thought it was all fun and games in this class, but then they finally realize this isn't a game, it's serious.
And that's also kind of how people perceive life sometimes. Sometimes it's a game and sometimes it's serious, but most of the time, there's a lot of serious stuff that happens and you have to have the maturity to understand it.
I think it also comes back to empathy too. Like, you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes and try to imagine what it'd be like.
I agree. Oh, look! There's a jet of green light coming toward us. Oh, thank God, it's only Polly.
Hey, it's Polly, our owl. She's flying in with the fun facts. Thank you so much, Polly. Let's get into these awesome fun facts. We learn a lot about the unforgivable curses in Mad-Eye Moody's, aka Barty Crouch Jr.'s Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson in Harry's 4th year, where he uses spiders to demonstrate each of the unforgivable curses. The curses are the Imperious Curse, the Cruciatus Curse, and the Killing Curse, Avada Kedavra. These curses are most heavily punished by wizarding law, and the use of any one of them against another human being is enough to earn a lifetime sentence in Azkaban. And now let's talk about each of the unforgivable curses in turn. First, let's talk about the Imperious Curse. Imperious means assuming power or authority without justification, arrogant and domineering. The incantation is Imperio. The Latin word for power is Imperium, and impero means I order. The curse itself appears to be a hybrid of both words to capture the nature of the curse. The Imperious Curse gives a wizard total control of another's mind. The curse can be fought, but it takes real strength of character. Also, the Imperious Curse caused a real problem for the Ministry of Magic when Lord Voldemort was all-powerful, because the Ministry had to sort out who was being forced to act and who was acting of their own free will. Next up is the Cruciatus Curse. Cruciatus is a Latin meaning torture, cruelty, suffering, and severe physical and mental pain. The incantation is Crucio. The Latin verb cruciere means to crucify or torture, and the conjugation crucio literally means I torture. The Cruciatus Curse causes excruciating pain. Moody says, you don't need thumbscrews or knives to torture someone if you can perform the Cruciatus Curse. The last unforgivable curse is the Killing Curse. The incantation is Avada Kedavra. At the Edinburgh Book Festival in 2004, J.K. Rowling explained where the curse came from. She says, it is an ancient spell in Aramaic, and it is the original of abracadabra, which means let the thing be destroyed. Originally, it was used to cure illness, and the thing was the illness, but I decided to make it the thing, as in the person standing in front of me. I take a lot of liberty with things like that. I twist them around and make them mine. Avada in Latin means death, and cadavra in Greek means to create. So the phrase Avada Kedavra loosely translates to I create death as I speak. Avada Kedavra is a curse that results in instant death. There is no counter curse and no blocking it. The Killing Curse is instantly recognizable by its characteristic green light. Moody says, Avada Kedavra is a curse that needs a powerful bit of magic behind it, meaning that anyone can point their wand at another and say the words, but the curse won't be successful if that person doesn't truly desire death on the other. There's only one known person who has survived the Killing Curse, Harry Potter. In fact, Harry's the only one who survived every unforgivable curse put on him. And now let's get into a deep discussion about all the times Harry was hit with an unforgivable curse, and when Harry cast one of the curses himself with our honorary half-blood princess, Kayla.
Now, it's time to dive into the book topic of the week for Tales of Magic and Mischief.
Harry's journey with the unforgivable curses starts when he's only a baby. It was October 31st, 1981. The night wet and windy, two children dressed as pumpkins waddling across the square, and the shop windows covered in paper spiders. All the tawdry muggle trappings of a world in which they did not believe. Also, I love how one of the kids comes up to Voldemort and is like, nice costume, mister. But can we talk about two things here? First of all, Godric's Hollow is a place where both muggles and wizards live together. So I'm wondering if Voldemort decided to do this on Halloween so his appearance wouldn't look weird to the muggles. And also, how did no wizards notice Voldemort just strolling across the square?
I don't know why no one noticed him crossing the square, but the other thing is, he doesn't care about muggles' safety at all. So he probably just thought it would be fun to go there on Halloween because he's like, well, it's the worst and spookiest day of the year. This is the best day for y'all to die.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think he cares for their safety at all.
And if it was any other night, I'm pretty sure he would have killed this child who complimented his costume. But because he was so focused on killing the Potters, he spared the child's life. So we all know what went down. The Fidelius charm has broken. He goes into the Potter's house and kills James, who is wandless. And then he goes upstairs to kill Lily. Lily puts Harry into his crib and stands in front of him with her arms out, trying to protect him. She's begging Voldemort for mercy, which doesn't go well at all, because he kills her. And then he turns his wand on Harry. He pointed the wand very carefully into the boy's face. He wanted to see it happen, the destruction of this one inexplicable danger. The child began to cry. It had seen that he was not James. He did not like it crying. He had never been able to stomach the small ones whining in the orphanage. Avada Kedavra! And then he broke. He was nothing but pain and terror. And he must hide himself. Not here in the rubble of the ruined house where the child was trapped and screaming, but far away, far away. So this is pretty intense. A few things. This caused so much wonder in the wizarding world. Obviously, the curse rebounded because of Lily's love protection. And I also think it's very interesting to note here that Avada Kedavra is a curse that leaves no trace. But the reason why Harry has his scar is because of the rebounding curse.
That is really interesting. And what really struck me here is when you said that Voldemort didn't like hearing babies cry. This guy is so hardened and bent on destruction, but yet he's unable to stomach the smallest forms of discomfort. Why do you guys think that is?
I think it's because Voldemort has no compassion and doesn't have the ability to feel love. So when he sees a baby crying, instead of the natural reaction of comforting it, he wants to back away and retreat.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think it's quite interesting that it's not the spell itself that gave Harry the scar. I always thought it was Avada Kedavra that it was. I think it's really interesting that it's the rebounding curse. That's really cool.
When Avada Kedavra hit him and bounced off is when he got the scar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about the curse itself, it's kind of erratic green light, and it's almost like a slashing motion, so it makes sense that his scar would be lightning shaped.
Yeah, that's really cool. And even though Harry had his first experience as a baby, there's so much more to come. And after Moody's Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson where he learns about the curses in his 4th year, things really pick up.
So Harry gets the Imperius curse put upon him in Goblet of Fire. Moody announces that as part of their next Defense Against the Dark Arts class, he will be putting the Imperius curse on everyone to demonstrate its power and to see whether they can resist its effects. Moody clears away the desks in the middle of the classroom, leaving a large empty space for each student as they go up to get cursed, and follow Moody's ridiculous demands. Hermione, of course, protests that this is illegal, but Moody says that Dumbledore wants the students to know what it feels like. He says, "If you'd rather learn the hard way, when someone's putting it on you so they can control you completely, fine by me. You're excused. Off you go." I love this part because Moody is just so blunt with her, and she's just like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll stay."
And I love how this is Barty Crouch Jr., but he's seriously embodying Moody so well.
Exactly. And what's really funny too is that you would think that he would have slipped up more, but he didn't because he had the real Moody with him. But the real Moody was probably unconscious for most of the time, so I don't know how he got so good at being Moody.
Yeah, it's also funny that he excuses Hermione, but I think it's completely out of her character to just leave a class, even though she does at some in the 3rd book.
I agree. She's like shocked and rooted to her spot, which I think is the most hilarious part of this scene.
Yeah, and Hermione recognizes that learning how to fight off this curse is important, and that's why she stays, which is different than in divination, where she thought divination was just the stupidest thing ever. It's actually important here, which is the difference I see.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
So one by one, the students go up and get cursed. Dean Thomas hopped 3 times around the room singing the national anthem. Lavender Brown imitated a squirrel. Neville performed a series of quite astonishing gymnastics he would certainly not have been capable of in his normal state. No one's able to withstand the curse until Harry comes up, and he moves into the space in the middle of the classroom, and Moody points his wand at him and says, "Imperio." Harry felt a floating sensation, as every thought and worry in his head was wiped gently away, leaving nothing but a vague, untraceable happiness. He stood there, feeling immensely relaxed, only dimly aware of everyone watching him. Harry hears Moody's voice echoing in the back of his mind, telling him to jump onto the desk. Harry bends his knees and hears the command again. But this time, he hears another voice in the back of his head. I'm guessing it's his free will or thoughts or whatever. And the voice asks him why he should obey, and then says that this is a stupid thing to do. Moody speaks the command again. "No, I don't think I will, thanks," said the other voice, a little more firmly. "No, I don't really want to." The command is repeated, and this time Harry moves. He had both jumped and tried to prevent himself from jumping. The result was that he'd smashed headlong into the desk, knocking it over, and, by the feeling in his legs, fractured both his kneecaps. Then the curse is lifted. So let's just talk about here why we think Harry was able to resist the Imperius Curse. Could it be because he was able to resist Avada Kedavra, which is a little bit more powerful? Or could it be because he has a strong will and he's also a Horcrux?
I think it's Harry's strong will that he's able to resist this curse and also other things in his life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with all these curses in general, it's said that with Imperius Curse in particular, in order to fight it off, you have to have a strong character. And Harry definitely has the experience and strength of what it takes to fight off this curse.
I completely agree, and that's one of the reasons why I like this curse, because it kind of separates the weak from the strong here. And with enough practice, you probably can lift the curse off yourself entirely. When the curse is lifted, Harry feels the empty, echoey feeling in his head disappear, remembers what's happening, and feels the pain he's in intensify. It's like he's getting out of a stupor. So Moody praises Harry and says that Harry fought and almost beat the curse. He says he'll try it again with Harry, which he does 4 more times in a row until Harry can beat the curse entirely. Moody also tells everyone else to watch Harry's eyes because that's where you see it. What's also cool about this curse is that your whole mind is wiped clean and you're basically listening to the person commanding you. So you're basically brainwashed and you're in so deep of a hypnotic stupor that you don't understand what's happening around you. So getting out of this might be easy for those people who have a strong will, but it's really hard for people who are weak because you're blissful at this point and you feel nothing. So you're like, why would I want to get out of this state?
Yeah, and I also think it's very interesting looking at Moody's character here because we know that he's Barty Crouch Jr. and he's Voldemort's most faithful servant, trying to go back to him and get him reborn and everything. So I think it's so interesting that he's taking so much time and effort basically helping Harry break this curse because it totally backfires because he basically helped him out.
Yeah, I also think it's an interesting point that it is Voldemort's most faithful servant, so he's got to be powerful. So when he's cursing Harry, maybe not the first time, but he's definitely trying his hardest with this curse. And the fact that Harry is still able to throw off the Imperius Curse is really a show of how strong his character is.
I agree. He's definitely not a puppet on a string at this point.
Definitely not.
In Chapter 34, Harry is hit with the Cruciatus Curse. His description of it goes as so. The pain was so intense, so all-consuming, that he no longer knew where he was. White-hot knives were piercing every inch of his skin. His head was surely going to burst with pain. So, Harry is saying that this is the most intense pain that he's pretty much ever felt, And I think it's really interesting that he jumps back from it so quickly after it stops. So this is telling us how the curse feels, and more from the perspective of being cursed instead of just like seeing it done in other situations.
That's really good you pointed that out. And like going back to what you were saying before about Barty Crouch being so powerful, putting the curse on Harry. In this instance, in the graveyard, Voldemort is cursing Harry with Crucio, which I think Crucio is way more severe than Imperio, just looking at the pain associated with it. And for him to bounce back so quickly after being Crucioed by literally Voldemort, I think that even shows more here than Imperius did.
Exactly. And it's Voldemort that we're talking about, so he's giving it his all, most likely.
Definitely.
If you think about Neville's parents, they were crucioed for a really long time, and it was really hard for them to get back from it. Obviously, they didn't get back from it, which is why they're in St. Mungo's. But Harry is able to get back from it. Granted, this was a shorter period of time, but if I was crucioed, my whole body would be weak at this point. It would be hard to even stand. And the fact that Harry's able to do that is a miracle in itself. It's almost like he's more than a wizard. He's like almost superhuman.
Yeah, and then go on to also fight Voldemort after that.
I agree, and also at this point, Harry must have so much adrenaline running through him after all that he witnessed with Cedric's death and Voldemort's rebirth, that fighting off the Cruciatus curse and bouncing back might not have been as difficult for him because of the current situation.
Exactly, and adrenaline is known to numb the pain. Also, the fact that he is young and healthy could have assisted him in surviving the curse.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys said. It's a mixture of all the things that made it so he could bounce back and continue to fight.
When you're crucioed and you're in that much pain, you don't really have a sense of how long it has gone on. So even when you wake up, you're like, how long has it been? What's going on? Where am I at? So there's also this moment of disorientation.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's almost like eternal, like when you experience something so bad you just want it to end and it feels like it's lasting forever.
Alright, so after this, Harry rolls over and gets to his feet. He's shaking uncontrollably and falls sideways into the mass of Death Eaters, who push him back toward Voldemort. "A little break," said Voldemort, the slit-like nostrils dilating with excitement. "A little pause. That hurt, didn't it, Harry? You don't want me to do that again, do you?" Harry realizes at this point that he is going to die, but he isn't going to play along or obey or even beg Voldemort. So when Harry doesn't answer, he's hit with the Imperius Curse. And Harry felt, for the third time in his life, the sensation that his mind had been wiped of all thought. Ah, it was bliss. Not to think. It was as though he were floating, dreaming. Just answer no. Say no. Just answer no. A voice in the back of Harry's head says that he will not and he won't answer. Voldemort repeats the command. The voice again says that he won't do it and he won't say it. The command repeats one last time. "I won't!" And these words burst from Harry's mouth. They echoed through the graveyard, and the dream state was lifted, as suddenly as though cold water had been thrown over him. Back rushed the aches that the Cruciatus curse had left all over his body. Back rushed the realization of where he was and what he was facing.
This is so intense. Like, he literally just got cruciated, and now he got the Imperius Curse put on him, like, so close together.
Not only is Harry able to bounce back from the Cruciatus curse, but when he throws off the Imperius curse, now they know that they're not just playing with a little boy. He actually has some skills up his sleeve. So Voldemort and the Death Eaters are taken aback, like, oh geez, we just thought we were going to see a little game where Voldemort plays with his puppet and then kills it. Well, nope, Harry actually has some skills.
Yeah, I want to see their faces when Harry threw off the curse, especially from Voldemort, like we were talking about, how he's so powerful. They must have been so surprised and confused.
So as we just talked about, the Death Eaters stop laughing and Voldemort questions Harry. "You won't say no? Harry, obedience is a virtue I need to teach you before you die. Perhaps another little dose of pain?" Voldemort's next curse misses Harry as he rolls behind the headstone of Voldemort's father, and the duel continues after that.
As just mentioned, Harry is behind the headstone, but then he decides that he's going to die upright like his father, and he's going to try to defend himself, even though defense is impossible. As if getting hit with both the Cruciatus curse and Imperius curse weren't bad enough, Avada Kedavra is coming right up. Voldemort was ready. As Harry shouted, Expelliarmus, Voldemort cried, Avada Kedavra. And then some really weird stuff starts to happen. So Voldemort's wand shoots a jet of green light and Harry's a red one. And all I can think of is Christmas lights, which is absolutely ridiculous, but that's my brain.
That is literally me. So when I was a kid, I wouldn't use green and red crayons next to each other if it wasn't like December. So if I was coloring something, green and red were not used next to each other. There had to be a color in between.
That's fantastic.
What other colors do you think would be a good match? Because green and red are opposites, but what other colors would be good for that spell, do you think?
What's interesting here is that green is go and red is stop. So Voldemort's like, I'm going to kill you. And Harry's like, no, I'm going to stop you.
Oh, that's a good one. Also, green is perfect for Avada Kedavra because there's a lot of background information on colors in the wizarding world, and green really represents the dark arts. But as far as Expelliarmus being red, it doesn't really distinguish that spell because Stupefy is red too. But when I think of Expelliarmus, I kind of envision it being like silver.
Well, if it was silver, the colors would be Slytherin.
Oh yeah, so we're at Christmas and Slytherin.
What about purple? Purple is royalty. Purple is I'm powerful. And Expelliarmus is kind of a basic spell, but it is powerful.
Yeah, purple and green would be cool. But unfortunately, JK left us with Christmas colors. So Harry's wand starts vibrating, and his hand seizes up around it, so he can't let go. He thinks of it as though an electric charge is surging through the wand. As if this isn't odd enough, when the two beams of light meet, they join together and make one beam of light that is neither red nor green, but gold. And then Harry and Voldemort literally float into the air and then land in a clearing where there's no gravestones. And all the Death Eaters are standing around like, what is happening? And then more beams of golden light arc over their heads and surround them until they're enclosed in a dome-shaped web of light. At this point, I'd be like, what is happening?
My brain would just go to how do green and red make gold?
Good question. I have no idea.
And also, how far away did they go? Like, this spell is so powerful that it takes them off of their feet and they just land somewhere else. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And then it gets even weirder because then Harry starts to hear Phoenix song. And to him, this is a sign of hope because it reminds him of Dumbledore and Fox. And the Phoenix song seems to be inside him rather than just around him, coming from the threads of light. And he hears a whisper in his ear as though a friend is speaking to him, saying not to break the connection. And then golden beads appear on this golden beam of light, and they start to slide toward Harry. Harry focuses all his strength into forcing the beads back to Voldemort because the closer they get to Harry's wand, the more his wand gets hotter and hotter until he thinks it's going to burst into flame. Eventually, he puts enough will into forcing the beads the opposite direction, and they stop and quiver and then change course. When the closest bead to Voldemort's wand eventually meets it, something weird happens. There's echoing screams of pain, and the ghostly hand comes out of the wand from when Voldemort created the hand for Wormtail. And then figures come out of the wand. First, Cedric comes out and says, "Hold on, Harry." And then the old man that Voldemort killed at the beginning of the book comes out and says, "He was a real wizard then. Killed me, that one did. You fight him, boy." And then Bertha Jorkins comes out and tells Harry to keep fighting and not to let Voldemort get him. And then Lily comes out and she says, "Your father's coming. Hold on for your father. It'll be all right. Hold on." James comes out last, and this is what he says to Harry. When the connection is broken, we will linger for only moments, but we will give you time. You must get to the Portkey. It will return you to Hogwarts. Do you understand, Harry? Harry tells him he understands, and Cedric tells Harry to take his body back to his parents, which makes me cry every single time. And then, at the right time, James tells him to break the connection. Harry jerks his wand upward, breaks the golden beam of light, the Phoenix song dies away, and the ghostly figures surround Voldemort to protect Harry for enough time for him to get to the Triwizard Cup and get Cedric's body and go back to Hogwarts. So let's talk about what happens here. The whole Priory Incantatem thing basically happens when two wands with the same core. In this situation, both Harry and Voldemort's wands have a tail feather from Fawkes the Phoenix. So when these two wands try to curse each other or fight each other, it creates this kind of golden beam of light that joins them, and then it becomes a duel of will, basically to force both of them to use as much will to make the other's wand show the previous spells that it cast. So this whole thing's basically called the reverse spell effect, and I think it's very interesting how this happened here, and that the figures that came out kind of helped Harry and advised him during the situation.
What's interesting here is that when I read the scene, I think it's a compilation of their last words and then after that their advice to Harry. When Lily says that James is coming, it makes me think that she's standing in front of his crib still and she's like, he's coming, he'll save us, and then she dies.
Yeah. I also think it's funny that the very first being or thing to come out of the wand is Wormtail's hand, and I think that'd just be really startling.
Yeah, like, what is this ghostly hand doing coming out of the wand?
And the dome that's over them is like protecting them from other people using magic against them. So it really is a duel only between two people. And then does the spell decide who it wants to help? Because the beings that came out of Voldemort's wand helped Harry.
It's like the will decides. So basically, like, the bees appeared in, like, the center of the golden beam, and then they started to move toward Harry. So Voldemort was in control at the beginning, but then this shows here, too, that Harry had a stronger will than Voldemort because he was able to reverse the bee's direction and send it back toward Voldemort.
We stand Harry. He's 14 years old, and he runs from a dark wizard.
Yeah, it's crazy. One more thing I want to point out here is that this is the start of Harry using Expelliarmus as his go-to spell, and we see this throughout the rest of the series.
Let's move on to Order of the Phoenix. In Chapter 36, Harry and Bellatrix Lestrange are in a duel. After Bellatrix insults him, Harry fights back. Hatred rose in Harry, such as he had never known before. He flung himself out from behind the fountain and bellowed, "Crucio!" Bellatrix screamed. The spell had knocked her off her feet, but she did not writhe and shriek with pain as Neville had. Bellatrix then starts talking to Harry about why it didn't work as well as he would have hoped. "Never used an unforgivable curse before, have you, boy?" she yelled. "You need to mean them, Potter. You need to really want to cause pain, to enjoy it. Righteous anger won't hurt me for long." This encounter shows that not just anyone could cast this spell. Even though Harry is a powerful wizard, he is young and not familiar with this curse. It is also a good example of Harry's character and how he really doesn't desire to hurt someone like that. If you were in this situation and your life depended on it, do you think you could torture someone like that?
Oh, that's a really hard question.
I feel like I'd do what Harry did and, like, say Crucio out of anger, but I don't have the hatred in me to cause the pain, like Bellatrix is saying.
I think I would do that too, because just saying the word freaks people out. So if you sound like you mean it, but you don't, that could also go in your favor.
This goes back to all the curses in general, because in Moody's class where he was explaining the curses, after he explained Avada Kedavra, he told them that any one of them can point their wand at him and say Avada Kedavra. And he said, like, the most he would get is a nosebleed. So you really have to mean all of these unforgivable curses in order for them to have an impact.
Exactly.
You have to be inherently evil so that you can cast these curses. You have to have some evil in you.
Yeah.
Bellatrix then offers to, quote, show him how it's done. Harry had been edging around the fountain on the other side. She screamed, Crucio, and he was forced to back down again. Even though Harry couldn't fully perform this curse, Bellatrix definitely could, and she does so with no hesitation.
I feel like Harry's just dodging the Cruciatus curse left and right throughout the series.
Yeah.
And in Bellatrix, you really see what an evil villain looks like. Someone who has no qualms about torturing someone else.
Yeah. So the Cruciatus curse isn't the only unforgivable that gets thrown around in this scene. Obviously, Harry is very upset over Sirius's death, and Bellatrix still wants the prophecy. And Harry explains to her how it broke, and explains the whole thing about Neville's robes tearing when he was helping him up the stairs in the death chamber. And Bellatrix basically is calling him a liar, which he's not. And Harry also starts to feel pain in his scar, letting him know that Voldemort knows about the whole situation and he's not happy. When he tells this to Bellatrix, she starts to panic. So Bellatrix is still calling Harry a liar, and she tries Accio prophecy, which doesn't work. And just to piss her off some more, Harry, laughs out loud. He waved his hand from behind the one-eared goblin and withdrew it quickly as she sent another jet of green light flying at him, which is Avada Kedavra, as seen with the green light. Bellatrix then goes off about being super freaked out about this whole situation. She's panicking about Voldemort getting mad at her, and she starts to plead for him to forgive her and stuff. And then Harry's telling her to save her breath because he can't hear you. And then Voldemort has one of my all-time favorite moments when he says, "Can't I, Potter?" The best entrance of all entrances. Voldemort's not happy, and he turns to Harry and is like, "So, you smashed my prophecy?" Which, first of all, this prophecy was both of theirs. So he needs to just sit down. And he's in such a bad mood because apparently he spent so much time planning for this whole thing, and his Death Eaters failed him, of course. Bellatrix tries to plead with him some more, but he's not having it, and then he turns to Harry and tries to kill him, as is his custom. "I have nothing more to say to you, Potter," he said quietly. "You have irked me too often for too long. Avada Kedavra." Harry had not even opened his mouth to resist. His mind was blank, his wand pointing uselessly at the floor. But the headless golden statue of the wizard in the fountain sprung alive, leaping from its plinth, and landed on the floor with a crash between Harry and Voldemort. The spell nearly glanced off its chest as the statue flung out its arms, protecting Harry. Naturally, Voldemort's WTF is happening, and then it's revealed that Dumbledore had turned up, and one of the best duels in the entire series between Dumbledore and Voldemort happens right here. So can we just talk about how in the same scene, he not only dealt with the Cruciatus curse, dodging it, thankfully, but also that he literally survived Avada Kedavra, both from Bellatrix and Voldemort.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Imagine if Dumbledore hadn't been there and it had just ended there and then, with Harry basically just standing there with no defense, completely confused and dumbfounded.
Yeah, that is a really interesting thought. And what I really like about this scene is that we finally see Dumbledore in action. Throughout the whole series, they're like, "Oh my gosh, he's so powerful." But in this scene, he actually proves it. And he comes to Harry's aid, which is awesome. Because if the series had ended there with Harry dying, that would have not been satisfactory to any of the fans. So he had to escape death another time. And of course, that's Voldemort's signature move. He'll kill other people, but he won't kill himself.
Imagine how frustrating it must be for Voldemort to literally, go to pieces when he tried to kill Harry when he was a baby. Then missed opportunity in Goblet, missed opportunity here. And here he is, the most powerful dark wizard. And he's like, "I can't even kill this kid. What is happening?" Oh, I think Voldemort's careless. Don't you?
He's careless with his Death Eaters because he's like, "All right, I'm just going to plan this, but I don't really care who comes back. And I don't care if you do come back, but if you do and you don't satisfy me, I am going to punish you anyway. So I don't really care what happens."
Yeah, and I think his rage and his anger fuels a lot of his decisions, which is not a good thing because that makes it so you are just high in emotion and not thinking straight.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to move on to the Half-Blood Prince. In Chapter 24, Harry and Draco Malfoy are the ones dueling. Draco begins his incantation, but Harry quickly reacts with his own spell, Sectum Sempra, and Draco doesn't finish.
Do you think Draco would have been able to create that pain if he would have finished saying the curse? I personally don't, just because we see how he doesn't kill Dumbledore. So Draco's obviously hesitant to the whole dark arts thing and really follows his father and his beliefs, even though he doesn't truly embody that himself. So I don't think he would have been successful here.
I think that if he was told to, like by Voldemort or his father, that there's enough hatred from Malfoy to Harry that he would have been able to torture him to an extent. But I don't know if he would have been able to use this curse to the full potential.
Thinking about it from Draco's point of view, he is a young wizard. He is inexperienced. So if this was the first time he used the curse and it was successful, it probably would have just given Harry a little bit of pain. Or if it was used and he was really angry, the pain probably didn't last that long if it was a lot of pain.
And looking from Draco's point of view, he's absolutely humiliated from Harry walking in on him crying over this whole situation. So in this moment, he's so angry with Harry that, yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that he would have been able to create some pain, but not the full curse.
In Chapter 28, the Cruciatus Curse is mentioned a few times. The first is right after Dumbledore's death and the Death Eaters have invaded the school. Ginny was fighting one of them as Harry ran past. The lumpy Death Eater Amicus, who was throwing hex after hex at her while she dodged them. Amicus was giggling, enjoying the sport. Crucio, Crucio. Harry stops this Death Eater, then goes to find Snape. Harry tries twice to use the Cruciatus Curse on him, but Snape was too quick. Cruce! But Snape parried the curse, knocking Harry backward off his feet before he could complete it. Cruce! Harry yelled for the second time, aiming at the figure ahead illuminated in the dancing firelight, but Snape blocked the spell again. Harry could see him sneering. "No unforgivable curses from you, Potter," he shouted. "You haven't got the nerve or the ability." This shows not only that Snape is really good at dueling, but he also knows the same thing that Bellatrix does. Harry isn't the type of person to use that curse to its full potential.
In this moment, I feel like Harry had more anger in him here than back in Order. But still, I don't think it would have been enough. Maybe he would have caused Snape a little bit of something, but I still don't think it'd be the full-blown Cruciatus Curse. Like, I'm really curious to see what would have happened if he was able to fully cast a spell.
He hates Snape, but he doesn't hate him that much.
Mm-hmm.
If it did work, it probably would have been maybe a migraine or maybe something where he could fall down and Harry could take his wand and retreat.
Yeah. The books keep telling us that Harry wouldn't be able to really torture someone, but given the right circumstances, do you think that he could?
Something would have to make him really, really mad. And if Sirius's death wasn't enough to make him really mad, and if Dumbledore's death wasn't enough to make him really, really mad to do it, I don't know what that could be.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that if someone killed Hagrid, he'd be able to do it.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah.
Ron and Hermione could also be a catalyst for Harry to perform this curse on someone and really inflict pain.
Maybe even Mrs. Weasley.
Yeah, I think Ron, Hermione, and Mrs. Weasley, definitely, just because they're so close to him and Harry considers them family on the same level as Hagrid. So I think any of those could potentially allow him to cast this and be successful.
Even more so Lupin, because he's the last one of James's friends alive, aside from Wormtail, but we don't like Wormtail.
I think that Harry could perform it on Dudley. There's so much built-up anger, or any of the Dursleys, really. There's so much built-up anger that I think he could muster enough to really torture one of them.
Yeah, I mean, They deserve it after all the torture they put him through. I mean, I don't think Harry would do it for a long period of time to like really mess them up, but like a few seconds just to show them like, I'm not for this anymore. Like, stop treating me like crap. I'm taking a stance now. We're done here.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't know if he would do it on the Dursleys because he saved Dudley from the Dementor. But maybe that's because Dudley was about to completely die, whereas the Cruciatus Curse, he'd just be like, I'm just gonna make this powerful enough to tase you, and that's it.
I agree.
Just after that, Harry is hit with what is implied to be the Cruciatus Curse, but all we have to go off of is his experience. Excruciating pain hit Harry. He kneeled over in the grass. Someone was screaming. He would surely die of this agony. Snape was going to torture him to death, or a madness. No! Roared Snape's voice, and the pain stopped as suddenly as it had started. We are to leave him. Go. Go. And Harry felt the ground shudder under his face, and the brother and the sister and the enormous Death Eater obeyed, running towards the gates. I like to think that Snape stopped the Death Eaters not only because it was Voldemort's orders, but because he didn't want to see him being tortured. And that's also why he was just blocking Harry's spells instead of fighting back just moments earlier.
Yeah, we could have a long discussion about Snape, which is going to happen at some point, but I definitely think that he does care for Harry on a level. Yes, he treats him like crap, but he doesn't hate him to literally watch him be tortured like that.
Yeah, and if I was Harry, I would kind of be like, oh shoot, I was torturing this guy and here he helped me. I'd feel bad. I mean, I'd almost feel bad. I mean, the guy did kill Dumbledore, so.
Yeah, but he's so high up on, like, Dumbledore's death that he probably couldn't process the fact that Snape low-key helped him. So I can see it from Harry's point of view, too.
Let's move on to Deathly Hallows. So in Chapter 26, Gringotts, the Golden Trio and Griphook are on a mission to break into Bellatrix's vault at Gringotts and find the Horcrux inside of it. Thanks to Polyjuice Potion and a bit of Bellatrix's hair and her wand from Malfoy Manor, Hermione poses as Bellatrix. Clever spells put in place by Hermione make Ron look different. He will be known as Dragomir Despard, foreigner from Transylvania, who speaks very little English and is sympathetic to the Dark Lord's aims. Harry and Griphook, who travels on Harry's back, trail along under the invisibility cloak. On the way, they pick up Death Eater Travers, and when they approach the counter inside Gringotts, Bellatrix is asked for identification by means of a goblin examining her wand. Harry realizes that the goblins know Bellatrix's wand had been stolen and has no choice but to use the Imperious Curse. A curious sensation shot down Harry's arm, a feeling of tingling warmth that seemed to flow from his mind down the sinews and veins connecting him to the wand and the curse it had just cast. How cool is this sensation?
It's almost like the power is flowing through his wand and out to control someone else.
Yeah, it's like a virtual leash, right? I just kind of picture in my mind, oh, it's an invisible beam of light from my wand to this person, and whenever I move my wand, the person moves, and the person does what I want.
This is something that I don't really like about the movies. The way they portrayed it is like a green mist that the goblin breathed in, and it's not really like that at all. I get that they have to have a visual representation, but I feel like they could have done it in a bit of a different way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. So what, the goblin has to breathe in the control? That just doesn't seem right. If anything, they should have had, like, what I was talking about, kind of the visual representation of the wand connected to the guy.
Yeah, but let's be real. The movies completely screwed up the whole last book, so not surprising here.
That's very true.
I feel like Harry would also get a rush of euphoria here, because it's like a heady sensation. So he's like, oh my gosh, I'm connected to someone else. I'm controlling them. So the power just seems sort of intoxicating. So then, thanks to Harry, the goblin proclaims that Bellatrix had a new wand made. Travers questions this turn of events, asking what wand maker Bellatrix used. He knew full well Ollivander was missing. Harry acted without thinking. Pointing his wand at Travers, he muttered, Imperio, once more. Oh yes, I see, said Travers, looking down at Bellatrix's wand. Yes, very handsome. And is it working well? I always think wands require a little breaking in, don't you? After a younger goblin gives the imperious goblin Bogrod the clankers, a leather bag full of jangling metal, it seems like they will escape without incident. But then another goblin comes scurrying over to Bogrod, saying that there are special instructions regarding the vault. Bogrod waves his colleague away, saying that he's aware of their instructions. Bellatrix wants to visit her vault, and they are an old family full of old clients. At this point, though, Travers is rooted to the spot with his mouth open, looking abnormally vacant. With a flick of his wand, he made Travers come with them, walking meekly in their wake as they reached the door and passed into the rough stone passageway beyond, which was lit with flaming torches. How funny is that? Travers is a puppet on a string. His mouth is open because he's doing nothing and he's useless. That's a red flag right there. The goblins literally noticed this.
Yeah, and also I think it's interesting here too because Harry is controlling two people at the same time.
Yeah, so he has to have his mind ultra focused. He can't let it slip or they're done for. So once inside, Harry and Griphook get out from under the invisibility cloak, and Harry explains to Ron and Hermione about their Imperious companions. The Imperious don't even notice Harry and Griphook getting out from under the invisibility cloak and look blank. They're out cold. They're in this mind world of bliss and happiness. They're like, oh yeah, I don't know what's going on. Just like Harry was. So the fact that Harry is able to cast this curse and control two people, this is the one curse that doesn't hurt people. So it makes sense that Harry is able to cast this one.
Yeah, it's definitely the least severe of the three. And also, Harry really had to get to that vault. So he's going to do anything he can, even if that means using the Imperious Curse.
So unlike the Cruciatus Curse, his desire is here. And that's what fuels these curses. He really wants to do them. So Harry's worried he didn't do the curse strong enough, as the real Bellatrix had told him that when casting the Unforgivables, you had to mean it. So after some back and forth, they decide to go on with the bank robbery plan. Griphook says that he no longer has the authority to control the carts, so Bogrod will have to do it, and that there is no room for Travers in the cart. Harry points his wand at Travers and says, Imperio, and Travers walks briskly along the track. What are you making him do? Hide, said Harry, as he pointed his wand at Bogrod, who whistled to summon a little cart that came trundling along the tracks toward them out of the darkness. Harry hears shouting from behind them as they all get into the cart and start off, while Travers wiggles himself inside a crack in the wall. That's hilarious. They don't talk about Travers getting out of the Imperious Curse ever, but imagine waking up inside of a wall.
I'm surprised Hermione isn't upset about this. And this just shows, like, from her class with Moody, when she was hesitant about the Imperious Curse, to now, like, she's starting to change and not be the goody two-shoes she was anymore.
Exactly. But I'd still be terrified if I woke up inside a wall.
Yeah.
So the goblins know something's up because the cart zooms through the Thief's Downfall, which is a waterfall that washes away all magical enchantments and concealment. They fly off the track and into a passageway, the cart shattering. Hermione and Ron are themselves again, and Bogrod is coming out of the Imperious Curse. Griphook points out that they need Bogrod because they need a Gringotts goblin to open the vault, and they need the clankers. Imperio, said Harry again. His voice echoed through the stone passage as he felt again the sense of heady control that flowed from brain to wand. Bogrod submitted once more to his will, his befuddled expression changing to one of polite indifference as Ron hurried to pick up the leather bag of metal tools. Hermione uses the shield charm to break the flow of water from the waterfall as it flew up the passageway. Then they find themselves face to face with a partially blind dragon. It was tethered to the ground and barred them access to 4 or 5 of the deepest vaults. Griphook explains that when the dragon hears the clankers, it will expect pain. Everyone shakes the clankers as they round the corner, and true to their name, they echo loudly. The dragon retreats. Harry makes Bogrod press his palm to the wooden door of Bellatrix's vault, and the door melts away. The cave-like vault has tons of treasure enchanted by Gemino and Flagrante curses, meaning that whatever you touch burns you, and the treasure will multiply the more you touch it. Harry comes up with the idea of hooking the blade of the sword of Gryffindor underneath one of the handles of Hufflepuff's cup, which he does manage to do, despite the fact that it was up on a high shelf. Unfortunately, Harry hits a suit of armor after Hermione casts Levicorpus on him. The armor multiplies, and so does the rest of the treasure in the vault. Hot gold burns and almost drowns everyone before they leave with the cup. In the chaos that follows, Griphook leaves with the sword of Gryffindor, crying, "Thieves!" And Bogrod, the Imperious Goblin, is swallowed up by the crowd of pursuing wizards and goblins. Harry frees the dragon, and the trio escape on its back. So there are two possibilities for Bogrod coming out of the Imperious Curse. He either goes underneath the enchanted waterfall and it breaks, or Harry breaks it himself by not pointing his wand at or thinking to order Bogrod around after the fact.
I also think another possibility could be that no magic is used in the vault, as seen when Harry tries to use Accio on Hufflepuff's cup and it doesn't work. So maybe it broke in there, but the goblin was so disoriented from being under it for a pretty long period of time that he didn't come to his senses quickly.
I also think it's interesting, like, what's the difference between using the Imperious Curse on a person or a goblin? Like, is it easier or harder?
Oh, I never thought of that.
Oh, yeah.
That's really interesting. Wow. I don't know.
I know with werewolves you have to have, like, a lot of curses thrown at them to make them fall or to stupefy them, which you see in Malfoy Manor. But goblin magic is different, and so is elf magic, like we talked about in the Dobby episode. So are goblins weaker than house elves because they're able to submit to the curse?
Yeah, I agree. This is super interesting.
In Chapter 30 of the Deathly Hallows, Harry finds Minerva McGonagall with Amicus. And I'm thinking, Amicus again? Like, this guy does not give up on being a Death Eater. He's back again. As Amicus spun around, Harry shouted, "Crucio!" The Death Eater was lifted off his feet. He writhed through the air like a drowning man, thrashing and howling in pain. Then, with a crunch and a shattering of glass, he smashed into the front of a bookcase and crumpled, insensible, to the floor. "I see what Bellatrix meant," said Harry, the blood thundering through his brain. "You really need to mean it." Now we get to see that, with practice, in extreme situations, Harry can and will use the Cruciatus Curse, and not just that, but use it well.
Yeah, and he protects Professor McGonagall, who is arguably my favorite professor in the entire school, so go Harry.
Yeah, and I'm just picturing this whole situation. Like, Harry's going up to the Ravenclaw common room to look at the diadem, and then Amicus and McGonagall turn up, and he's like, "All right, Cruciatus Curse time," and McGonagall doesn't even care, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that too. And here, tensions are running so high, and Harry is in such a hurry that he's like, "I'm not going to fool around. This is what I'm doing, and we're going to get out of here."
One of the things I liked most about Harry was the innocence of his character, which made it so that he could not torture someone when he tried to use the Cruciatus Curse, because he didn't mean it enough. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree, and this whole situation with the Cruciatus Curse shows so much of his growth, because we see in Goblet that the severity of the situation is starting to come through, but now it's literally like, I gotta get this Horcrux. I have to stop Voldemort. So the stakes are much higher, and looking at how much Harry grew over the series from all his experiences, it definitely changed him and allowed him to do this curse now when he wasn't able to before.
And you have to look at it this way too. Harry was protecting Professor McGonagall, so he, in his head, had to say, okay, this torture is fine. It's not the best option, but it's all we got. If it's self-defense and not malicious intent, Harry's able to do it.
Yeah, and he really, really cares for Professor McGonagall. So it doesn't surprise me that he's able to do it now to protect her after all she's done for him.
So, as we can see, later, Harry does succeed in doing the Cruciatus Curse through character development and practice. The next time this spell is used is in the Room of Requirement in a fight against Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle. Crucio. Crabbe's curse missed him, but hit the stone bust, which flew into the air. Draco then tells Crabbe that the Dark Lord wants him left alive, to which Crabbe responds, "So, I'm not killing him, am I?" I think it's funny that as much as Draco hates Harry, and I'm sure he would really like to see Harry being tortured, his fear of disobeying Voldemort overpowers that, making him stop Crabbe.
Yeah, you really start to see a change in Draco's character. And as we were talking about before during the scene in the bathroom about his capabilities of casting that curse himself, like, he's preventing that from happening here. So I think that really starts to highlight that point more of, like, he doesn't hate Harry to the point of wanting to see him get tortured.
Exactly.
You also see a change here in Crabbe's character, because in the beginning of the series, he was this submissive person who just followed Draco. He has come into his own now, and he has decided that he will be evil, and that he likes seeing people tortured. Which is interesting here, because I would have never thought that his submissive little cronies actually had personalities.
Yeah, totally. Now on to chapter 34, The Forest Again. This is after Harry goes into the Pensieve and sees all of Snape's memories. This is when he learns of his destiny. Harry has to die because when Voldemort tried to kill him when he was a baby and the curse rebounded, part of Voldemort's soul latched itself onto Harry's. And because neither can live while the other survives, Harry has to die. So he literally walks into the Forbidden Forest with a full intention of dying. Can we talk about the amount of bravery it takes to do this?
It's an insane amount of bravery.
Yeah, Harry has so much willpower and love to do all the things he does that doesn't even surprise me anymore that he was just so ready and willing to just do whatever it takes.
If it were me, I think I would do the same thing, because think about how many people have sacrificed themselves and their safety for Harry. I mean, he has to pay them back in some respects. And if that means dying and being that person that has to go, then that's what I would do. It would be really scary. I'm surprised he was so calm when he was walking into the forest. I'd still be shaking if it was me.
Yeah, but thanks to the Resurrection Stone, he walked into the forest with his parents, Sirius and Lupin, while he was under the invisibility cloak. But once he reached the clearing where Voldemort and the Death Eaters are gathered, he drops the stone, and his parents, Sirius and Lupin, disappear, and he takes off the invisibility cloak and faces Voldemort. Voldemort had raised his wand. His head was still tilted to one side, like a curious child wondering what would happen if he proceeded. Harry looked back into the red eyes and wanted it to happen now, quickly. While he could still stand, before he lost control, before he betrayed fear. He saw the mouth move and a flash of green light, and everything was gone.
I feel like there should be like a collective sound here where the curtain closes after your dramatic scene where you're talking. It's like all over and the screen goes black. That's what I'm picturing.
Yeah. And let's talk about the significance here. Because we know after this happens, Harry basically goes to wizard purgatory, sees what Voldemort would become, the flayed baby, and talks to Dumbledore. And Harry has the choice to return, which he does. But this time is so much different than the first one when he was a baby. Because this time, when Voldemort cast that spell, basically he killed his piece of his soul that was in Harry. And because neither can live while the other survives, either they're both alive or both die, and that had to happen. And now that his soul is gone from Harry, it's literally both of them alone now.
This took me a long time to understand because the wording is so cryptic. Here, neither can live while the other survives. But they both have to die or live, and then after that, one of them can die.
Yeah, but it's a prophecy, so it's gotta be cryptic. That's like in the description.
Oh yeah, but as a kid reading this book, I was really confused.
Yeah, and also talking about why Harry had the choice to come back. I think it all comes back to the prophecy, because he was destined to kill Voldemort, so he was given the choice to come back and fulfill that prophecy. And also, I'd like to add here too that Harry did the same thing his mother did. Like Jess was talking about before, how Harry was dying to basically protect everybody else and recognizes all their sacrifices. When Lily died, she gave Harry that love magic that protected him. And now that Harry died, Harry gave all of them back at Hogwarts who were fighting in the battle that same protection, which I think is so awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even think of that.
So the last time that the Cruciatus Curse is used in the books is in chapter 36. This is when Harry is pretending to be dead in the Forbidden Forest amidst Voldemort and all his followers. Crucio, Harry had been expecting it, knew his body would not be allowed to remain unsullied upon the forest floor. It must be subject to humiliation to prove Voldemort's victory. He was lifted into the air, and it took all his determination to remain limp. Yet, the pain he expected did not come. He was thrown once, twice, 3 times into the air. His glasses flew off. He felt his wand slide a little beneath his robes. He kept himself floppy and lifeless, and when he fell to the ground for the last time, the clearing echoed with jeers and shrieks of laughter. Now, this is Voldemort, who is extremely powerful, and most definitely means it, as Bellatrix said. So, what are your theories as to why he felt no pain when he was hit with the Cruciatus Curse?
Harry is feeling such pride right now to be alive again and to have that chance to come back and finish what he started. And I honestly think that now that Voldemort's soul is gone from him and that he created that love magic for all those others, he's in such a position of happiness and strength right now that no matter what is done to him, it's not going to affect him at all.
Exactly.
It's the strength of the rebirth that is going through him. So he was made strong again.
Yeah, so there are several things that could be the reason as to why the curse didn't work on him at all. The first is, like you guys were saying, he was able to replicate the same sacrificial love magic that his mother did, which protected him and the rest of the people fighting against Voldemort. The second is because Harry was the true master of the Elder Wand, and that was the wand that Voldemort was using, that it wouldn't harm its rightful owner. The last is that Voldemort believed that Harry was dead, and because of that, he wasn't trying to torture him. And he didn't expect that the spell would torture him, so therefore, it didn't. Personally, I think that it is a combination of all 3 of those, and that, all in all, the Cruciatus Curse is a very complicated and deadly spell.
Those are all fantastic points, and especially that last one makes a lot of sense. But going back to your second one about the Elder Wand, that definitely plays a role too, because as we'll talk about in a couple minutes with the last duel, we see the same kind of situation develop there.
The Cruciatus Curse is the most complicated of the 3. Because Imperio, you're just controlling someone. You have to mean it, so there's that. I mean, the power of Imperius depends on the person, and so does the Cruciatus Curse. But the Cruciatus Curse is actual physical pain, so the intent is the most important part of that curse.
Yeah, there's so much emotion behind it, and you have to feel the emotion yourself in order to make the other person feel that extreme emotion of pain and suffering. So yeah, I totally agree.
It also comes back to what Bellatrix said, that you have to enjoy someone's pain. And I think that's just, I don't know if I could ever, if I were in the wizarding world, I don't think I could do this curse for that reason alone.
No, me neither.
Exactly.
It's also the intentions of the curse give her on how much pain the victim receives, and that's why this is such a complicated curse.
Now, my friends, we made it to the end. We are on chapter 36, The Flaw in the Plan. After the whole scene where Voldemort announces to everybody that Harry is dead, has Hagrid lay him at his feet, and does all that, Harry springs back into himself and joins the final battle. Everybody backs up into the castle, and Harry takes off the invisibility cloak and faces Voldemort in the middle of the entrance hall with everybody else around watching. He and Voldemort start to have a little chat as they are circling each other. And I'm sorry, this makes me think of Simba and Scar from The Lion King, like, circling each other. Is this just me?
No, that's great. I get the exact vibes.
That makes sense, but I've never pictured that.
Oh my gosh, that's the first thing I pictured the first time I read this. So, as they are circling each other, in a nutshell, this is what they talk about. Harry tells him that he won't be killing anybody else. He explains about the love magic, tells Voldemort that Snape was Dumbledore's and not his, explains that Snape loved Lily, talks about the Elder Wand, saying that Voldemort is not the owner because Draco is the one that disarmed Dumbledore, and then Harry disarmed Draco at Malfoy Manor, therefore he is the rightful owner. And then he tells Voldemort to try for some remorse, which, come on, we can't see Voldemort trying for some remorse, but at least Harry gave him a shot here. And how do you guys react to this? Like, Harry's facing his enemy after all he's done, even after Harry saw what Voldemort would become after he quote-unquote died, he's still giving Voldemort one more chance.
Harry tells him to try for some remorse several times, and I was kind of annoyed. I'm like, you know he's not going to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like delaying the inevitable. Like, he's not going to be remorseful. Let's just get it over with. That kind of bugged me too, is because this whole circling thing is like the anticipation building, and the fact that he's like tries for some remorse when he's literally in front of him about to kill him. I was like, come on. The guy's about to kill you and you're like, try for some remorse. I don't think so.
And now here's one of my all-time favorite passages in the entire series. A red gold glow burst suddenly across the enchanted sky above them, as an edge of glittering sun appeared over the sill of the nearest window. The light hit both of their faces at the same time, so that Voldemort's was suddenly a flaming blur. Harry heard the high voice shriek as he too yelled his best hope to the heavens, pointing Draco's wand. Avada Kedavra! Expelliarmus! The bang was like a cannon blast, and the golden flames that erupted between them, at the dead center of the circle they had been treading, marked the point where the spells collided. Harry saw Voldemort's green jet meet his own spell, saw the Elder Wand fly high, dark against the sunrise, spinning across the enchanted ceiling like the head of Nagini, spinning through the air toward the master it would not kill, who had come to take full possession of it at last. And Harry, with the unerring skill of the Seeker, caught the wand in his free hand as Voldemort fell backward, arms splayed, the slit pupils of the scarlet eyes rolling upward. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, his body feeble and shrunken, the white hands empty, the snake-like face vacant and unknowing. Voldemort was dead, killed by his own rebounding curse. And Harry stood, with two wands in his hand, staring down at his enemy's shell.
So Harry actually never casts the curse that kills Voldemort. Voldemort casts it and it rebounds on him. This just proves how great of a person Harry is. He didn't kill his enemy killed himself.
Exactly, and it's so awesome to see from that duel in Goblet, when they did the same curses, the Avada Kedavra and Expelliarmus, happen here again. And when the curses met in midair and rebounded, Voldemort got killed by his own curse. And also, this goes back to what Kayla was talking about with the Cruciatus curse, and how since Voldemort wasn't the true master of the Elder Wand, he couldn't give Harry that experience with the Cruciatus curse of extreme pain. And that's what happened here. Because Harry was the owner of that wand, it would not kill him. And this is so cool.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but when I was researching for this, I kind of just sat down and just read this entire chapter. I love it so much. It's so great.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts in the whole series, and I love the conversation they have. There's so much closure. And seeing this duel almost brings the series full circle because the first curse that Harry experiences is Avada Kedavra. And then here, Voldemort tried to kill him with that curse again, and it rebounds for a second time, like it did when he was a baby. But this time, it killed him.
And let's talk about the way they describe Voldemort on the ground. He's an empty shell. His eyes are unknowing, his hands are splayed. It's like watching a Horcrux break open, like the diary with the hole in it and the locket. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, it's also really awesome here because Voldemort thought that he was unstoppable. And Harry destroyed all the Horcruxes. And it really came down to them alone. And it wasn't even a match of skill of who could cast Avada Kedavra first and the strongest, because Harry would never cast that. He stuck with Expelliarmus as he always does. And that was enough to have that spell rebound and kill Voldemort. And I think it's so awesome that Harry didn't even do anything deadly or serious. Expelliarmus is such an innocent spell, and that was enough.
I don't know if some readers find this ending very satisfactory. I mean, the whole point was to kill the guy, and he didn't even kill him.
I get that, but I also think it's really symbolic in the way that's full circle, and that Harry using Expelliarmus in the graveyard and relying so heavily on that spell. I mean, you know, all the times in the books and the DA meetings with Lupin and all that, when they're telling him, like, oh, come on, Expelliarmus, like, do something else. That's your signature spell. You're recognized by that. And Harry's like, listen, it saved me from him once. It's going to save me from him again. And it did. So I think there's a lot of symbolism in that. And not where I get where some people might be a little disappointed. For me, I think it holds a lot of meaning. And it was a perfect ending.
Yeah, and it's also, Voldemort is dead, and Harry's left with a clean conscience. So I think it's a pretty good ending.
So that brings us to the end of a fantastic discussion about the Unforgivable curses. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let us know any thoughts you have on the curses. If you have a favorite, if one intrigues you the most, please let us know. And Kayla, how did you like being our guest?
I loved it. I loved researching it and rereading all these different parts and diving deeper into like the meanings of all the curses, especially the Cruciatus curse and what makes it work. And I thought it was really interesting and I really enjoyed my time.
We loved having you.
Thank you so much, Kayla. We call all of our guests honorary half-blood princes or princesses, so thanks for being our honorary half-blood princess for this episode. Our next episode comes out on November 13th, so stay tuned for that.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to this chapter of the Half-Blood Princesses, a Harry Potter podcast.
Hedwig's theme and Leaving Hogwarts in this episode were originally composed by John Williams and arranged by me. Until next time, mark this page with a magical bookmark.